This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
The grand finale, as we call it. Let's give a brief summary of the first two segments of this topic. We'll start with the first part one. Part one, just very briefly, we said there are four Malchios, there are four kingdoms that span the world, that ruled the world, that exiled the Jews. And these four kingdoms were symbolized by the vision of Daniel, where Daniel saw a lion, which definitely represented the Babylonians, who destroyed the first Beis HaMikdash. Then Daniel saw the bear. The bear represented the Persians. He saw the leopard. The leopard represented the Greeks. And simply put, the fourth Malchus, the fourth kingdom, he saw a monster. And probably the majority opinion is that the fourth Malchus was Rome, the ones who destroyed the second Beis HaMikdash. We had a question, why the Arabs, why Yishmael is not counted as one of the four Malchios. And the Maharal gave two answers. Answer number one was because the Arabs never took the koach of Klal Yisrael. The definition of a Malchus is somebody who defeats the Bnei Yisrael and takes away their Malchus. But the Arabs have their own independent source of power, which is the prayer of Abraham Avinu, that Abraham daven, Lu Yichya Yishmael, Lu Yishmael Yichya Lefanecha. If only Yishmael would live before you, God. And what did Hashem respond? Uli Yishmael Shematicha. That Hashem said, yes, I will listen to you regarding Yishmael. The other answer we gave, the other answer of the Maharal was the reason why Yishmael is not counted is because Yishmael already has been counted. How has he been counted? The Persians. The Persians include Yishmael. And using that idea that Paras, that Persia includes Yishmael, we explained various Gemaras that seem to say that at the end of days there will only be two remaining empires. The Romim, the Romium, the Romans, and the Persians. We asked, what do you mean the Persians? The Persians are long gone. So he said, according to this Maharal, that the Persians include the Arabs, so at the end of days, these two nations, the Christians and the Arabs, the Christians and the Muslims will be doing battle. So using this Maharal, who explained that Persia is really the Yishmael, so we understood how at the end of days, these are going to be the two remaining nations. That was week number one. That's the executive summary of week number one. Yeah.
The Persians, the Iranians are Muslim, and the Ishmaelites are Muslim.
Yes, it is quite interesting that somehow Persia and the Muslims have coincided today. And there's another country that many Jews live in, that even though it used to be a Christian country, the leader of that country that there are a lot of Jews in happens to be someone who shows a lot of regard for the Muslim faith. But we're not going to say which country we're talking about. Okay? V'hamevin Yavin.
That's a mystery.
V'hamevin Yavin. Okay. Week number two, we explained that when God promises that all the curses of the various tochachas, God is going to put al oyevecha v'al on your enemies. And we explained that there's a difference between oyevim and sainim. Oyev might be even more harmful than a saine. The word oyev comes from the word oy and avoy, right? Oy and avoy. Whoa. Okay, so, and we said perhaps the Arabs may be the oyevim, while the Christians may be the sainim. And this is basically where we're up to. But everybody agrees at the end of days, it's going to be a battle between these two nations, Yishmael and Bnei Esau. Okay? This evening we're going to begin with number 26. If everybody has a sheet. And just to spell out very quickly, we mentioned also part of the reason why the Arabs hate us so much is because while Yishmael still maintained Yerusha from the Avos, while Esav still maintained Yerusha, Esav was given Seir, Har Seir. Nevertheless, Yishmael was completely rejected. Sarah said, Gareshes ben Ho'ama Azois. Sarah rejected Yishmael, and because Yishmael was utterly rejected and disconnected from the Avos, that is a source of his deep hatred for Bnei Yisrael. We also mentioned that's one of the reasons while the Christians accept the written law the Arabs reject the Torah Shabbat. And one of the main reasons is because according to the written law, Esav is just as much of a son of Yitzchak as Yaakov is. It's only the Torah Shabbat Peh that we darshan ki bi Yitzchak yikar lechazara bi Yitzchak v'lo yikal Yitzchak. But according to the written law itself, Yishmael has been utterly rejected, and that's why the Arabs not only reject the oral law, they reject the written law as well. Okay? Now we begin with number 26. We're going to hopefully conclude this evening with this topic, so we're going to try to cover a lot of ground. We begin with the Kli Yakar. Kli Yakar explains a very interesting incident in the Chumash. We know that Rifka Imenu, it was difficult for her to conceive and have children, and after Yitzchak married her when she was 3 years old, he waited until she was 13, and then he davens for her for 10 years, and then after 10 years, he waited 10 years until she was 13. He waited another 10 years to see if she was really an Akara, and that's when he started davening. And what happened? Hashem heard their tefillos, and Rivka conceived. And a strange thing happened. She's passing by a house of a Beis Medrash, a Beis HaKnesses, a shul, a yeshiva, and somebody's trying to get out. It seems like she's having a tzaddik. On the other hand, every time she passed by a house of idol worship, someone's trying to get out. And she doesn't understand what's going on. And the simple meaning of what's going on is why is she distraught, why is she so confused? She thinks her kid has schizophrenia. She thinks the kid doesn't know how to make up his mind. Is he a tzaddik or is he a rasha? But the Kli Yakar has an entirely different shot. Says the Kli Yakar, Rivka knew exactly what was going on. She knew she was having one kid who's a tzaddik and one kid who's a rasha. However, she made the following calculation. Avraham Avinu had two sons. Who were they? Yitzchak and Ishmael. So Rivka said to herself, why did Abraham have two children, one who's a tzaddik and one who's a rasha? Very simple. He had one child with Sarah. They were both righteous. They produced a tzaddik. He had one child with Hagar. She was a rasha. She produced a rasha. It's the same thing with me. Rivka said, I may be a tzaddikis, but where do I come from? My father is Besuel. My brother is Lavan. I come from bad stock. My DNA is wicked. And therefore, we're having two children. One of them is a tzaddik. You know where he comes from? Yitzchak's responsible for him. But the other son, who's a rasha, it's my fault. So she thought she's no better than Hagar. Hagar produced a rasha, she's producing a rasha. Until finally she goes to the yeshiva Shem Ve'ever, and these Nevi'im tell her, you have to realize, what words do they say? Shnei goyim bevitnech. Two nations are in your womb. Rashi points out that the word could also be read geyim. Geyim means two majestic, dignified people. Rashi says, Zer Rebbe, the Antoninos. You know who's going to come out of you? The great Tana Rebbe, the codifier, the editor of the Mishnayos, and Antoninos. Antoninos was the Roman emperor, right? The Roman general. So how exactly did these Nevi'im console Rivka? Oh, don't worry. You're going to have Rebbe and you're going to have Antoninos come out of you. So she should still be worried. Rebbe's a tzaddik. Antoninos, he was a good guy, but you wouldn't exactly say that we have Yiddish Nachas from Antoninos. He was a good guy, but he wasn't Jewish. So how was the Navi telling Rivka that what's going to happen to her is better than what happened to Hagar? At the end of the day, Hagar and Abraham produced a tzaddik and a rasha, and Rivka's going to produce a tzaddik and a rasha. Says the Kli Yakar. No. There's a big difference between the tzaddik and the rasha that Abraham produced and the tzaddik and the rasha that Yitzchak produced. Says the Kli Yakar. When Abraham produced a tzaddik and a rasha, the tzaddik was Yitzchak, but Yishmael was such a rasha. Nothing good ever came out of him. Nobody good ever came out of Yishmael. But at least Esav. At least something good came out of Esav. Antoninos was a good guy. And many other Gerim, many other righteous converts came out of Esav. So while nothing good ever came out of Yishmael, Rivka, don't worry. You're not as bad as Hagar. Hagar produced a rasha that's rotten through and through. Esav, he himself is a bad guy, but not all of his descendants are terrible. Like we learned yesterday in the Gemara. Nebanav shel Haman, loimdim Torah b'vnei Brak. Right? So a lot of good things are going to come out of Esav. So you're not exactly like You're not exactly like Hagar. Hagar produced a rotten Russia through and through. Yishmael has no redeeming qualities. However, Esav, there are some redeeming qualities. And in fact, I didn't put it on the sheet because I hadn't found it when it went to press. But the Chida writes in the Sefer Chomes Anach that we have a tradition from the Arizal that no one converts from Yishmael. Doesn't mean nobody ever, but in general we have a tradition, the Arabs do not convert. The Christians, many righteous converts. You have Shmaya v'Avtalion. You have Onkelos Hager. You have the Bnei Banav Shalom and Lam Bnei Brak, Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas. You have many righteous converts. The righteous convert Avraham ben Avram. You have many righteous converts.
Onkelos was the nephew of Titus.
Titus, right? Titus was Rome, right? He's the son of Vespasian.
Yeah. He was the nephew of Titus.
Yeah.
Onkelos. And we were reading all his explanation, like Rashi and everything. And
yeah, and in fact, there's an idea that Onkelos has even more Kedusha than Rashi. So Onkelos was actually given on Har Sinai. There's an idea that he restored the translation that was given on Har Sinai. So and by the way, the Chida explains, why is it that Rivka, at least her Russia that she produced, had some redeeming qualities, and the Russia that came from Abraham did not? So the Chida writes, there's an idea, that wine takes on the taste of the casket, right? If you have an alcoholic beverage, you put in a cherry casket, so it takes on the taste of the casket. Actually, Rabbeinu Bechaye writes that if you see somebody has good midos, you could attribute it to the mother more than the father. Why? Because the baby developed in the mother's womb, so the mother becomes like the barrel that the baby was in, and the baby absorbs more of the mother's nature than the father's nature. So this idea is that Yishmael was in whose womb? Hagar. Therefore nothing good ever comes out of Yishmael. But even Esav was in the womb of Rifka, so at least something good came out of him. Okay.
but
now,
Ishmael married Esav's daughter, right? Machalat.
Yeah, so
that's another amazing.
So now they've mixed
right,
together.
Right.
They've mixed together. That's true. That is true. Yeah. So now the Arabs have good yichus on both sides. Mishnei Atzadim.
Support them actually. You know. Seriously. I mean, that's why.
That's interesting.
Esav, this is actually the blonde hair, like Norwegian, Sweden. Like the reddish blonde hair. This is what it is, and it's amazing how they support them, and they really truly support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So they're families. They're families. Okay? Now the Maharal explains also on a deeper level, what is it that nothing good ever comes out of Yishmael, and from Esav you do see some good things come out. Maharal says very clearly in number 27 that the neshama and the nefesh of the Bnei Esav is different than the nefesh of the Bnei Yishmael. The nefesh of the Bnei Yishmael, says the Maharal, is not a nefesh chashuva. It's not a dignified soul. The nefesh of the Bnei Esav is a nefesh chashuva. And in fact, says the Maharal, how do we know that the descendants of Esav have a dignified soul and the descendants of Yishmael do not? There are three ways to tell. Look at a regular European, you look at a Christian, at least he wears dignified clothing, he dresses like a mensch, he eats a meal, he puts a plate in front of him, he eats with a fork and a knife, and he takes a shower. He likes to take a shower sometimes. He actually bathes himself. As opposed to the Bnei Yishmael, they eat like animals, literally, and if you were ever in certain neighborhoods in Yerushalayim, you know that. And they do not bathe, they're unhygienic, and they dress also like animals. They wear rags and cloths. Why? Says the Maharal that there's a difference in the nefesh of the Bnei Esav as opposed to the nefesh of the Bnei Yishmael. The Bnei Yishmael display that they have no dignity when it comes to what they eat, the way they dress, and the way they maintain themselves. As opposed to Bnei Esav, at least they understand they have a dignified soul, so therefore something good could come out of them. Somebody who has self-respect, ulai yesh tikva, maybe there's hope for them. But somebody who treats themselves like a behema, So you know what you have. And in fact, Rabbi Shua Leib Diskin says something amazing. By the way, what we're saying now is not necessarily politically correct. I just want to make that point. But the Rabbi Shua Leib Diskin says, Rabbi Shua Leib Diskin says, listen to this. According to the Hebrew language, there's a rule that the noun always precedes the adjective. For example, Bayis Chadash, Bayis Gadol. Adam is the man, a noun. Gadol, he's great. Adam Chashuv, Adam Harishon, right? We never put the adjective before the noun. The noun always precedes the adjective. There is one exception. When it talks about Yishmael, it says V'hu yeh pere Adam. First it says the adjective. He's a man. He's a beast. Adam, he's a man. Right? The adjective is pere. Yeah, he's a wild animal. Adam, he's a man. It should say Adam pere, noun, and then adjective. Says Rabbi Shua Leib Diskin, it does say the noun first. The noun is, he's a wild beast. That's what he is. He's a pere. Adam is like a description. What kind of wild beast he is? The kind that's sort of like a man. In other words, really you should say Adam pere. A man? What kind of man? Pere, a wild man. No, just the opposite. You want to know what kind of... He's a pere. That's the noun. The adjective becomes a noun. He's a pere. Adam is merely a description. Okay, that's what Yishmael Leib Diskin says in number 28. Okay, now so far we've learned that, I just want to remind you, that we had a dispute, we had a machlokas between Ramban and Ibn Ezra. What is the fourth malchus? The Ibn Ezra said the fourth malchus is Yishmael. No? What? Ibn Ezra. Ibn Ezra says the fourth malchus is Yishmael. What about the Romans? So we learned that Rome and Greece is the same, because if you look at the Bnei Yavan, the sons of Yavan, one of them was Kitim. Kitim is Rome. So Ibn Ezra puts Rome and Greece together, and Yishmael is the fourth malchus, and the Ramban disagree. The Ramban says, no, Rome is the fourth malchus. Actually, if you look at number 29, you'll see...
He said the fourth one is...
Yeah?
The fourth one is Ishmael, so...
What happened to Rome?
All the rest is done.
Rome and Greece is the same.
So they're still alive.
No, according to him, Yishmael has basically taken over the planet. Now, according to Ibn Ezra. Okay?
And it's true. Apparently it is.
Taking the future and taking the present.
In a way. What?
Future,
He was saying the present. This is talking about almost 1,000 years ago, but he was saying in the present. Okay. Tell you something very interesting. Tell you something amazing. Rashi writes in Sefer Zechariah that actually this whole concept, by the way, I didn't write the Maramakum in number 29, this is from Rashi in Sefer Zechariah, that we say there are 4 Malchios, the truth is there are more than 4 Malchios. It's 4 that are 8. Each one of the Malchios has like a partner. For example, let's read Rashi. Look at number 29. Ra'isi b'medrash Tehillim. Rashi says, I saw in a medrash. Shedalid Malchios halalu, these 4 Malchios, Sheshibdu bi Yisrael, that enslaved Klal Yisrael, Kfulais hayu, they were doubled. For example, Bavel, you had Babylonia, but Babylonia had a sister, Kazdim, the Chaldeans. For example, Nebuchadnezzar was from Babylonia, but his son, Evil Merodach, and his grandson Belshazzar were really Kazdim, because Nebuchadnezzar married a Chaldean woman, so he was from Bavel, and he didn't want his son, actually Nebuchadnezzar imprisoned his son, because he didn't want his son to take over when he died, because he's Babylonian, and his son is a little bit, it's like, it's a different Chasidus of Goyim. It's Chaldean.
Yeah, but that is really Iraq of today, and Kasdim is really not Iraqi, it's Kurdistan.
Yeah.
This is where Abraham born, right?
Mesopotamia.
Right.
So, but it could be considered one, but if you could break it down further into 2, Bavel and Kazdim. How about Paras, Persia? Very simple. In the Gemara, in Megillas Esther, what do you have? Paras? Paras umadai, Madai Paras. They're sisters. Paras umadai. The Persians were, let's say, Achashverosh, and Madai, Daryavesh, Koresh. Fine. Then you have Greece, but Greece also had a twin. Antiochus, who was a Greece. Mokdon. You had Alexander. Okay?
So,
Macedonia.
Macedonia, what is it? Like
It's like a partner.
Right.
Says Rashi, what about the final one? What about the final Galus? Edom v'Yishmael. The last one. Ramban says it's Edom. Ibn Ezra says it's Ishmael. Says Rashi, together. They're partners. It's each one of the four Malchios has two parts. So the last Malchus is Edom v'Yishmael. In fact, we'll just skip for a moment. The Shla Kadosh writes, if we could find it on the sheets over here, the Shla writes in number 38, that even though our Galus is called Edom, there is Malchus Yishmael, but it all fits under the general umbrella of Edom. So what Rashi's saying is a little different than Ramban and a little different than Ibn Ezra. Ramban says the fourth one is Rome. Ibn Ezra says it's Ishmael. Rashi says they're sisters. They're together. The last Malchus is a combination of the two. Okay? Now using that, let's proceed. The Radak says in number 35, something very interesting. Radak says, so far we've learned about two visions. We learned about the vision of Daniel, where he saw the animals. He saw the lion, the bear, the leopard, and the monster. We learned about another vision, where they saw a creature with a head of gold. Gold represented Babel, with the chest and arms of silver that represented the Persians, the belly and the thighs of copper, and the legs of iron. We'll come back to that. There was another vision. Horses. They saw horses. What kind of horses? First they saw red horses. That represented Babel. Then they saw black horses. That represented the Persians. They saw white horses. That was Greece. And then they saw gray horses with spots. It's the only animal they saw that was not a uniform color. It had two different colors. Says Radak, why? Because the fourth Malchus is not uniform. All the other Malchios, you could say it's one solid Malchus. There was no interference with any other Malchus at the same time, except for the fourth one. The fourth one was gray with spots, because we're dealing with two different Malchios at the same time. Look at number 35. V'hamerkava hazos, this combination. Remez l'malchus Romi. This alludes to the Romans. Shehishpila malchus Yavan. They vanquished the Greeks. Umalcha hi ba'olam. And ruled over the world. Says Radak, Ure'ei ba shnei gavanim. But look, there are two colors here. Lefi sheyesh malchus acharima. Because this last malchus has another malchus with it. Vehi malchus Yishmael. The Arabs and the Romans ruled together. The gray spotted horses. It's not uniform color, it's not a solid color. Likewise, when Nebuchadnezzar had a vision, now listen to this, it's a split malchus, which refers to the following. Again, Daniel saw, Nebuchadnezzar saw a creature with a head of gold, with the chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of copper. But what about the feet? So until now we learned, what?
What about the tail? What was it made of?
There's no, who says it was an animal?
Donkeys have tails.
What?
Donkeys have tails.
We don't say what the real animal wasn't.
No, this is a different vision. It was a person. But the feet were iron. However, if you look at the next pasuk, see? If you look at the next pasuk, the feet were iron, not solid iron. The toes were made of earthenware. Some toes of earthenware, some toes of iron. Says the Malbim, why is that? Because the fourth Malchus,
What is the feet part?
like this. Basically, the legs were iron, and the toes were iron and earthenware. What? Earthenware, cheres, kli cheres. Like this. At first, says the Malbim, the fourth Malchus is Rome, and Rome is strung like iron. But after it continues a little bit, after the legs end and the feet, the toes are there, it's iron and earthenware. You have 2 feet. One will be strong and one will be weak. the Arabs and the Christians battle it out. At first, says the Malbim, the legs are iron, but then the legs turn into iron and earthenware. If you look, this is in number 37, because, well, let's read it inside. V'di chazisa. Okay, Daniel is explaining to Nebuchadnezzar his vision. Hinei b'malchus hazeh haravius. In this fourth malchus, shet siaru, that was described, b'shokim, with thighs, v'raglayim, and legs, shehim shnei perkei haregel achronim. These are the final two parts of the leg. Ra sha'ashokim kulam mibarzel. The thighs were entirely iron. Ulam, however, perkei haraglayim, the ends of the feet, v'ha'atzbais, and the toes, ra mehem cheres shel yotzer mehem barzel. Some were earthenware and some were iron. Why? And the reason is, v'huki malchus haromiyim, at first the Romans, tiyatchila kula takifa kabarzel, are all powerful and strong like iron. V'tzir b'malchus hazeh shnei shokim. This fourth malchus is depicted as two legs. Why two legs? Because it has two parts. There's one head, there's one body, there's one stomach, there are two legs, because the last malchus has two parts. Some of it is iron, some of it is earthenware, to show at one point the Romans will be prevailing over the Yishmael, and at another point Yishmael will be prevailing over the Romans. This is a constant struggle until Yimos HaMashiach. Back and forth and back and forth. This is the only malchus, even though we said all the malchus really have two parts, but this malchus, more than any of them, it's a constant struggle, it's a constant war. I want to tell you something very interesting. We mentioned.
So he says two malchuyot, Ishmael ve'Edom, between one of them is wrong.
Yeah, Edom is wrong.
Edom is wrong.
Yeah.
But before you say Ishmael and Edom are the same one.
Yishmael, they're all part of the fourth malchus, but the fourth malchus consists of two parts. One is Yishmael, one is Edom. Edom is Rome. Esav is, Rome is the capital of Edom. Okay? Tell you something very interesting. Right? At the end of the Seder, what's the final part of the Seder? Chad Gadya. What happens in the Chad Gadya? You have their father came, he bought a shepsel, he bought a sheep, right? For 2 zuzim, for two coins. And what happened? Comes along a cat, it eats the sheep. Comes along a dog, eats the cat. What happened to the dog? There's a stick. Actually, what happened before that? What happened before that?
Something interesting.
You're right, a stick. And then a fire came and burned the stick. And water came, put out the fire. An ox came, drank the water. The shoichet came, slaughtered the cat. Then the Malach HaMavos came, killed how many attacks in all? 8. Who are the attacks on? The Seh. Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky. Chaim Kanievsky is alive today, he's the son of the Stipler Gaon. The Seh, the sheep, represents Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael is referred to as Seh Pezura, where the Navi says, Va'atein soin marisi, you're my sheep. Right? Who's the father? Avinu Malkeinu. Rebbeinu Shalom is our father. He bought Klal Yisrael. With what? Shnei luchos abris, the 2 zuzim. The 2, right? Rebbeinu Shalom bought Klal Yisrael. Comes along the cat. Who's the cat? The cat is Bavel. Why are they compared to a cat? Because Daniel saw Bavel as a lion. A lion is a cat, right? A lion is a cat. The Bavel came, destroyed Beis HaMikdash, attacked Klal Yisrael. Came along Belshazzar and usurped the Babylonian Empire. The Gemara says, Chazal tell us, that when he took the kingdom of the Beis HaMikdash, he fed his dogs with it. He's compared to the dog. Came along the dog, attacked the cat. Then there was a stick. Madai is compared to a stick. Why? Because Daryavish and Koresh, they took the menorah and they slammed it on the head of Belshazzar like a stick. They're like a stick. The Persians are like fire. Why are they like fire? Because what does it say about Achashverosh? His anger burnt in him. Chazal tell us why is the anger burning? God sent the malach that's appointed over kas, over anger. Throw your fire into Achashverosh. So the Persians are compared to a fire. What about water? Water. Alexander is compared to water because Gemara says in Talmud Alexander found water of Gan Eden, and he put it over his face. The ox are the Greeks. Why are the Greeks considered the ox? Because what gezerah did the Greeks make? They told Klal Yisrael right on the horn of an ox, Ein lanu chelek b'elokei Yisrael. So the Greeks are the ox. Who's the greatest butcher of all time? Rome, the Christians, the Crusaders, the Germans. They're the butcher. Sheichet. They're the sheichet. And who's the Malach HaMaves? The Arabs. The Arabs are the Malach HaMaves. Until the Ribbon Shalom comes, until Hashem himself comes and saves us. But what we're dealing with at the end of days is not a stick or a dog or a cat or water or fire. We're dealing with something a lot worse. We're dealing with Edom is the sheichet. He's the butcher. Right? And I think everybody could agree Edom certainly fits the bill of the butcher. And the Malach HaMaves, the Arabs have invented ways to kill that never in the history of mankind did anyone ever murder that way. Until the Arabs came along, people killed, but no one ever would give up their own life to kill somebody else. Only someone who's the Malach HaMaves is willing to kill at all costs. That's the Arabs. So basically, according to this, Mashiach comes. When does HaKadosh Baruch Hu come? After the fall of Rome and after the fall of Yishmael. Rabbi said, look at number 44. After, in the end of Parshas Chayei the end of Parshas Chayei where it talks about the family of Yishmael. So it talks about how Yishmael gave birth to many children, right? Mishma, Duma, Umasa, we quoted last week from the Rambam. This is really an allusion not just to the children of Yishmael, but how we relate to the Arabs in general. Mishma, you hear their insult. Duma, you remain silent. Masa, you bear it. Right? Remember that? And then the end of the Parsha ends, Al Pnei Kol Echav Nafal. On the face of all of his brothers, he falls. So it alludes to the fall of Yishmael. What are the very next words? Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak. Now comes the rise of the descendants of Yitzchak. Says the Baal HaTurim, number 44. Al Pnei Kol Echav Nafal. V'samech la, right next to it. Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak. Loimar, this teaches you. Kishayipol Yishmael ba'achras hayamim. When Yishmael falls at the end of days, Oz Yitzmach ben David. Then Ben David will flourish. Shehu mitoldos Yitzchak, who is from the descendants of Yitzchak. And you may ask, when you're talking about Geula, why be Merames it in Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak? Why not Abraham? Why not Yaakov? So if you remember in Parshas Pinchas we learned Yitzchak is Begematria Pinchas Eliyahu, and Yitzchak is Begematria the Haftarah of this week's Parsha Nachamu Nachamu. Yitzchak is Begematria Nachamu Nachamu. So when could we hope for the ultimate Nachama of Nachamu Nachamu? Al Pnei Kol Echav Nafal. After the fall of Yishmael, then Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak. That's the ultimate Nachama Nachamu Nachamu.
Why say Yitzchak ben David?
Oz Yitzchak ben David. What?
Why ben David?
The Mashiach.
That one.
What?
We're not going to...
Oh.
Why that one of the four?
Oh, why that one of the four? That's the final one. The final Gula will come when Yishmael falls. Maybe some of the other steps could happen before Yishmael falls. I'm not sure. Okay, we're going to end with the following piece from Reb Chaim Vital. Chaim Vital was the primary disciple of the Arizal. And the Arizal very often would tell Reb Chaim Vital what a holy neshama he had. He was always telling him what a holy neshama he had. We mentioned on Shabbos, Reb Chaim Vital said, what do you mean what a holy neshama I have? I don't even compare. I'm not even as great as the lowest person in the earlier generations. So Arizal told him that as the generations progress and the difficulties and the challenges become harder, you are judged based on your generation, and this generation, since the challenges are so hard, your soul could be higher than even the great Tanoim and Amoram. In any event, Reb Chaim Vital says something amazing. And he's explaining Parak Kuf Chav Dalet in Tehillim, which is number 45 on the sheets. Yeah, let's take Parak Kuf Chav Dalet in Tehillim. Shir HaMalois LeDavid. Shir HaMalois LeDavid. A song of ascent by David. Lulei Hashem Shahayo Lanu Yomer No Yisrael. Bnei Yisrael says, had God not been with us, it would have been really bad. And then Bnei Yisrael repeat, Lule Hashem shahaya lanu. Had God not been with us, B'kum aleinu Adam. When an Adam arose against us. So Bnei Yisrael repeats twice, had God not been with us, oy vey, oy vey, oy vey. And then Bnei Yisrael says, and you think that's bad, had God not been with us, when an Adam stood up against us. So first, Bnei Yisrael are lamenting, are worried about, are saying if God did not help us under situation A, and then they said, oy vey, and if God did not help us under situation B, when an Adam attacked us, it would have been very, very bad. And the Parak of Tehillim goes on to say that situation one, then situation number one, we would have been swept away by the water. We would have been cast away. The water would have carried us away and taken away our lives. But thank God, Pasuk Vav, that Hashem did not let us fall prey to our enemy. And then, situation number two, which is Pasuk Ches, Azreinu b'shem Hashem oiser shamayim va'aretz. We don't even understand how we can be saved from it. Doesn't even make sense. All we could do is put our faith in Hashem. Says Reb Chaim Vital, there are two main tragedies of the Jewish people. The tragedy of the Daled Malchios, and the tragedy of something that will happen after the Daled Malchios. The Daled Malchios, says Reb Chaim Vital, Bavel, Madai, Persia, Yavan, Rome, that's bad. That's bad. Why is it bad? Because basically, they just want to kill us. They want to kill us. They want to take away our soul. They want to take away our soul. They, actually, Reb Chaim Vital says, they're interested in converting us. They're interested in converting us. Taking away our neshama. However, if we don't go along with their forced conversion, they'll kill us. But they're not really interested in killing us. If we would submit to their religion, they would be very happy, as we find throughout history. During the Crusades or other times, or in Spain, when the Jews were willing to convert to the other religion, they let us live. What? Not in the Holocaust. That may have been an offshoot of Amalek. That might be different. But in general, the Christians, if we convert, they'll be happy. Fine. However, if we don't convert, they're going to kill us. So we come to Hashem, we say, Hashem, you need to save us. You know why? Because if it would be up to us, we would submit to their religion. But you don't want us to. So if you don't want us to, then you have to help us. So Hashem always helped us under the Daled Malchios, and we always could count on the help of the Ribbon Shalom. However, the Daled Malchios, how did Daniel see them in his vision? As animals. A lion, a bear, a leopard, a monster. As animals. Why did Daniel see the Daled Malchios as animals? Because these four Malchios, they're like animals. What makes you a human being? Bris Milah. None of these Daled Malchios have Bris Milah. Esav doesn't have Bris Milah, right? The Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, they don't have Bris Milah. So they're not even an Adam. So they're animals. Daniel saw them as animals. However, the second set of tragedy the Jewish people have to face is B'kum aleinu Adam, when an Adam comes against us. Again, if you look at these psukim in Tehillim, first Bnei Yisrael say, Lule Hashem shahaya lanu yoimana Yisrael. Had Hashem not been with us. But then what they really are afraid of, Lule Hashem shahaya lanu, B'kum aleinu Adam. Who is Adam? Adam is the Pere Adam. The Pere Adam, Yishmael. Why is Yishmael called an Adam? Because at least Yishmael has a bris milah. However, why is he a Pere? Because he doesn't have priya. He has a half a milah. He doesn't have a full milah.
Right. But why does he have a milah?
Because God gave him the mitzvah of milah.
Right. Is that the reason?
He was the son of Abraham.
Yeah, Hashem told Abraham to mal all the people of his household.
Right.
So Yishmael was included. Yishmael was 13 years old at the time. So Yishmael had milah, and he continues to do milah. So at least that gives him... Is he commanded?
He's not commanded to do that.
He's not.
We are commanded.
Right.
They are not commanded.
And they don't even know how to do it right.
Yeah.
But he doesn't even believe in Hashem. He wanted to do something.
He was the son of Abraham Avinu. Hashem says to Abraham Avinu,
it's not
give it to your children.
It's the fact that
There was this son. at the age of 13,
Yeah, but he didn't
they have
keep
the
it.
schut. But
Why do you keep it for?
No,
I mean, are they commanded to do Milah?
they are
but they don't do it right.
I think.
And they don't
Did we learn there's a machlokes, the Rambam,
13 years old, so it's not even
right?
Right, they do it backwards.
It's not a mitzvah.
B'nai Keturah.
It's not very.
I think there's a machlokes Rishonim
It's not a mitzvah.
whether Yishmael has to do Milah or not. I don't remember right now. It's machlokes Rambam and Ravid. Yeah?
It's really
Rambam and Ravid, whether they have Milah or not. I don't remember exactly.
But you have a tzivui, that's the point. That's the thing.
But they do it. Whether they have to or they don't have to, they do it. And the Milah gives them the image of Adam. So they're considered an Adam.
it's not a mitzvah.
Again, I'm not sure. There may be one Shita in the Rishon that says they're mitzvah, they're commanded. But even not, but they do it anyway. They do it. So that gives them the tzura, that gives them the form of Adam. So these are the two. No. This gives them. So now we have two categories of galuyos that Bnei Yisrael have to go through. The Dalad Malchios are, they're animals. The lion, the bear, the leopard, the monster.
According to the Shita, Ishmael is not within the mountain.
So now we're saying he's like a fifth. He's like a separate entity. He's an right. There are two categories. One category is the Dalad Malchios.
This is now that this is like the Rambam.
No, either way, according to either Shita, they're a separate category. Whether they have to do Milah or they just do it anyway, the fact that they do it gives them the tzur of Adam. So this is what Bnei Yisrael are most afraid of. Not Lulei Hashem Shahayalanu. That's Adam Machios. Lulei Hashem Shahayalanu B'Kam Aleinu Adam. That's Yishmael. Yishmael has the status of Adam. Now, an animal is vicious and ferocious, but at least what you have over the animal is you have the human intellect. But when you have a human who's also an animal, that's the worst combination. That they're the most fearful, frightful thing that Bnei Yisrael has to undergo. So we mentioned earlier that at least when it comes to the Dalad Malchios, we say to Hashem, Hashem, look, they are just interested in our religion. If we submit to them, all will be good for us. So, but we don't want to submit to them because you don't want us to submit to them. So you need to help us. We come to Hashem and say, Hashem, you have to help us. But Yishmael says, Reb Chaim Vital, Yishmael's not just interested in taking away your religion. Then the pasuk in Parak in Tehillim says, Azai chayim b'launu. They want to swallow us whole. They're not interested in just taking away the nefesh and the neshama. They're interested in completely annihilating any remnant of your body that you never existed. They want to wash you away as if you never lived. They want to swallow you whole. They want to swallow you whole. So what are we going to say to Hashem? Ribbono shel olam, you need to save us. It's our problem now. They're not after the religion. They're after us. The physical. They're after our entire being. So we can't say, God, the imperative is that you have to save us like you have to save us from other ummais. What do we say? We say, as Reinu b'shem Hashem, oisei shemayim v'aretz. Hashem, help us. You created heaven and earth. Means what? Says Reb Chaim Vital. Bereshis bara Elokim es hashemayim v'aretz. Hashem created the world, Bereshis, for Bnei Yisrael. And if you don't help us from the Bnei Yishmael, then the whole world is going to be futile. Why? Because there won't be a Bnei Yisrael. And if there won't be a Bnei Yisrael, then Shemayim v'aretz, heaven and earth, is pointless. So all we could do, says Reb Chaim Vital, when it comes to facing this fifth tragedy, when it comes to facing Ishmael, is we have no one to turn to. All we could say is we have to put our full Betachon in the Ribbono shel olam. And specifically when it comes to Ishmael, it requires, Reb Chaim Vital explains, more Betachon than any other national tragedy the Jewish people ever went through. Again, because they want to utterly destroy any remnant, any vestige of anything of us. They want to take our money, they want to destroy our bodies, and they want to destroy our religion, as opposed to all other malchios. Other malchios are just after the soul of the Jew. That's what Reb Chaim Vital says. When it comes to the other ummais, they're called the Mayim Hazedonim. The Mayim Hazedonim, the torrential waters. Says Reb Chaim Vital, this is a remez to all these ummas. When they want to convert us forcibly, they sprinkle you with their waters. Their waters. But Yishmael's not interested in that. They're interested in Azai Chayim B'La'unu, to remove any vestige of being of our existence. Says the Pirkei de Rebbe Elazar, we'll close with this. V'lama, the last Maramakam, V'lama Nikra Shema Yishmael. Why is he called Yishmael? She'asir HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'shmaya b'kol nakas ha'am. God will in the future listen to the outcry of the people. Mimasha asidin b'nei Yishmael lasais ba'aretz bi'achros hayomim. Because of that which Yishmael is going to do to us at the end of days. Lefikach nikra shema Yishmael. Why is he called Yishmael? Shenemar Yishmael. Yishmael is a remiss to the fact that at the end of days, because of Yishmael, the Bnei Yisrael are going to cry out to the Rebbeinu Shalom more than at any other time, and God will be Yishmael. God will listen to our outcry. Because the Galus of Yishmael requires more faith and more trust than at any other time in our history. But as we said from the Baal HaTurim, Al Pnei Kol Echav Nafal, that when Yishmael falls, the Eile Toldos Yitzchak, that's when Ben David will come, the descendant of Yitzchak. Yitzchak Be'otos Yitzchak, Begematria, Nachamu, should be zochet to see the fall of Yishmael, the fall of all the Seinei Yisrael. Should be zochet to see the Binyan Beis HaMikdash, should be Askel Tzedek, Herav Yameinu Amen.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.